What's up YouTube, Mojo Designer here, bringing you something a little different. In the past I've done small Unreal Engine tutorials. I did a landscape tutorial which is quite popular. I do apologize for the low res on that, but again, a very popular video with you guys. And I've also done speed level design videos where I quickly built a scene. I built a scene over time, but I sped it up in the video editor. But now I'm doing something completely different. I'm doing complete level design slash visual scene tutorial from scratch. I will teach you how to build this exact scene step by step. No sped up video, lots of commentary, lots of insights to how I build my visual scenes, and hopefully this will inspire you to build your own scenes using the same assets or with different assets. The things I teach and cover apply to any visual scene building. Just a caveat, this is not the end all be all way to build visual scenes, but hopefully it will get you on the right path. If you're new to it, or if you already know about it, you might pick up something new, or it might just be a fun way for you to practice what you already know. And if anything I've missed, I apologize. Please hit me up in the comments to explain anything that I may have covered too quickly. And hopefully you guys will enjoy this. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is download Unreal Engine. I have a link below in the details. So once you've downloaded it and installed it, you should have a screen like this. And when you have it loaded, you want to come to your library, and then you want to install the Elemental demo package. You can use kind of any package because what I want to teach with level design is applicable to any art set, and just a way of doing things, or the way I do things to build a level or a visual scene. So for this tutorial's sake, I'm going to be using the Elemental demo project. When you install it, it should show up in your My Projects. Double click it to load it, and when you load it, you should get a scene like this. This is a scene already created by Epic Games. It's a pretty cool scene. But what we're going to do is go to File and New Level and click on Default. Once we have our new level, the first thing we want to do is go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and type Power, and search for Use Power of 2 Snap Size. Basically, when you type in Power and turn that on, what that does is set your grid to powers of 2, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on, which is much easier to work with in my opinion than powers of 10, which the editor defaults to. The next thing I want to do, that I usually like to do when I build a level, is open my modes. If you don't have this, you can go to Window and click on Modes, and I click on Lights, Skylight, and this is just temporary. And I set it in the Details panel on the right, under Light, set its value to 2. And then what I like to do is go in the top corner where it says Perspective, Lit, and Show, set it to Detail Lighting. What this does is kind of just grays out all the lighting and colors of the scene, and it kind of work with gray colors and gray cubes. It really helps me at least focus on the shapes, and I can focus on the colors later when I feel I'm ready for the lighting pass. So it's kind of a step I do, and you may have seen me do this in my speed level design videos. So that's what I do at this stage. So let's go back to the concept art that I found. Some people can actually build a level, just out of the blue. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. But it's good to have a concept or a point of reference to what you want to build. And for this scene, I'm going to be building this castle walkway, as discussed earlier. And the Elemental demo package has some cool castle assets, so it should work just fine. So we're going to break this concept down into its core parts. We see that there's a walkway, a wall, some pillars, an archway, some tall walls, curved walls, cool entrance piece, and some rock formation. So we kind of know the pieces we need to work with before we get into the really detailed part of the level and the visuals. So let's begin by building this lower catwalk, this walkway, and these pillars. And if you're not familiar with Unreal Engine, please go back and watch my Unreal Engine Basics Part 1, 2, and 3, where I cover a lot of how to use the editor and the viewports. I'll try to refresh some of that as I go through, but I will not be focusing on that mainly. I'll be focusing on how to build a level from start to finish. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my cube. I'm going to Alt and left click the widget and drag it out. And we're going to do this 4 times. or 3 more times, so we have 4 pieces total. Alright, now if we go back to our concept art, it's kind of a straight walkway. So I'm building a straight walkway. And to keep it at this angle, you can lock your camera. To do that, you can hit Control 1. So I'm gonna lock my camera to about this point here. Hit Control 1. Now if I look somewhere else, hit 1, my view is locked. So I'm gonna build in this view to match the concept that I found online. Next, I'm gonna build the wall around the walkway. So to do that, I'm going to select my wall, my floor, rotate it by 90 degrees. Bring it up. And then I'm going to scale it in the y-axis. Well, actually, the reason why it's going to be the y-axis is because I rotated it. Because it's technically not the z-axis, but in your transform tools on the right side, you'll see location, rotation, scale. You can change X, Y, and Z. Now, for this example, I'm going to be changing it in the Y by 0.15 and bringing it down and lining it up to the other side by using the Alt drag. And then I'm going to clone both pieces down the walkway. Next, I'm going to build a. Oh, that's a little bit off. Let me select that and bring it in. Next, I'm going to build the pillar pieces at each segment. So again, I'm going to take my cube here and scale it back to 1. And actually, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to scale this guy. Bring it in the Y to 0.15, X 0.15, and in the Z, I'm going to set it to 8. If that looks too big, I'm going to set it to 4 in the Z. And I'm going to put it at the beginning segment here. Drag it to the other side. And then it's going to clone it down the line at each segment line. One. Alright, so we have our walkway built, and it's not the exact shape, but we'll get back to that later in the deco pass, but in terms of geometry, it's starting to match the walkway and the walls. So for the next part of the level shell, let's work on building the archway and the upper wall. So I'm going to fly out over here. I'm bringing my concept to my other monitor so I kind of have a point of reference. I'm going to take this piece here. Actually, I'm going to first extend the walkway out just one more time. Take this piece and pull it back about halfway. Clone it. And then in the transform part of scale, I'm going to set it to 8. And do one more time. I'm actually going to go to 16 on the Z. Then I'm going to take this piece here, clone it. And at this point, I'm not really worrying about the Z fighting, like where the shapes are overlapping each other. We'll fix that later. And I'm going to scale this, and then again, since I rotated it, I was trying to explain this concept earlier. At this point, this cube is in the proper direction X, Z, X, Z, Y, and X, matching the colors of the transform: red, green, blue. But when I rotate this guy, the angle is actually changed. So technically where Y was is now Z. So if you rotate it and your scales are not lining up, it's because you rotated the object. So it says the 2 that's not the direction I wanted. So I'll just set that back to 1.5. And on my Y, I'm going to set it to 2. No, that's not what I want. And then so you realize 16 is the value we were changing. The height of it is now the length of it. It's a little confusing, but we get the hang of it. So I'm going to set this to 24. Just kind of go across like that. Then I'm going to take this floor piece, clone it, rotate it to 90 degrees, and bring it up here, and line it up with the top of my arch. And we can make this a bit thicker. We can check our, nope, not that axis. In the Y, nope. And in the Z, 2, 4. Alright, I have my arch built. Hit 1. Line that up a little bit in the middle. Bring back my concept that I found. And now I'm going to build the tall pillars going up on the left and right side. So I'm going to clone this guy again. And I'm going to scale it up really big. Set it to 1. Let's say even 0.5 in the X, 0.5 in the Y, and let's say 32 in the Z. This is behind my pillar here. And then I'm going to drag it up. And clearly that is not as high as I need it to be. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate it. Make 2 of them. And I'll drag it to the other side. Look back at my concept. And I can see these pieces on the left and right are kind of thick, so I'm going to extend the scale. So I'm going to set the Y value to about 1. Set the top one to Y value of 1 as well. Line it up. Actually, 1 seems too big. Let's go with 0.75. That looks more in line. I'll set that bottom one to 0.75. Delete these guys, select these guys, and duplicate it. And we can lower it just a bit. I'm gonna hit G for game mode, hit 1. Look at my concept reference. Starting to take shape. Again, just working with the cubes right now. We'll come to the details later. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the archway a little bigger because I think that looks a bit too small. Again, this is just a personal preference, but I think it could be bigger. If you're following along and think it was at the right size, you can work with that as well. But I feel that looks a little more grand. Now, the next part I'm going to do is build the side walls that go into the rock. So I'll select this wall here, and let's look at the reference. So it's not at the same height as this piece, and it's about a bit lower than the larger pillars. So I'm going to try to eyeball this and set it to the height that I think it's good. So right about there. And I will set my Z to about, let's say, 64. Nope. Let's set that back to 4. Set my Y to 64. Nope. Again, because since I rotated the mesh in the opposite direction, it doesn't conform to the direction that it's scaling it to. So back to 1, and it's going to be on the x-axis this time. 64. 64 is a bit big. Let's go to 32. 32 is a bit big. 24. Oh, that's massive. 16, 8. 8 works. I don't know why I was thinking that big of a number. And right about there. And let's scale it a little bigger, set it to 2 on the Y. And rotation and angle it to about, let's say, 20 degrees. And roughly line that up. And now a cool thing we can do is we can actually duplicate this to the other side using the transform tool. So I'm going to hit Alt and drag the clone, but then I'm going to select, right click on it and say transform mirror X. Nope, and that wasn't the right axis. We're going to go transform mirror Y, and then drag it out, and we can line it up. Hit 1, come back to our reference, starting to match. Now we can do some very base cubes to set the reference point for where the rocks are. Nothing too fancy. So I'll take this guy here, and I'll scale to 4 in the X, 4 in the Y, or maybe force to make 2, 2, and let's say 2, 4 in the Z. This is a nice big, that's a bit small, 8, 16, okay, 16 on the Z. I just building things on the fly, you know, mistakes will be made, but we're working through it. And the rocks kind of jut up against the wall on the left and the right side and behind this structure. So let's try to mimic that with our cube. And we'll kind of set it at an angle. And I'll use the scale tool to kind of just scale it in one direction that I need it to. And then I'll clone it. Clone it again. Then clone to the other side. Rotate it. It's kind of just building out some rough shapes that where the rocks are. And then there was a big rock formation behind us, so I'm going to duplicate this guy to the back. Scale it using the scale tool, because I don't need an exact number. So now just doing different camera lock so I can kind of see the top of where my mountain is. Control 1. And bring up my reference again. Kind of hard to see, but we have kind of the base shapes we need. We have the walkway, we have our pillars, we have our archway, we have our rocks. In fact, just for kicks, let's turn back on lit mode, and let's go to our content browser. If you don't have it, go to Window, content browser, bring it here, and I'll select material, and I'll search rock. And I'll select basically, let's say, Cave Rock 01 and apply it to my temp rock cubes. Select them. And then on the right side, you have transform, static mesh materials. It says element 0. Use selected asset from content browser. Okay, then I'll type wall. Turn off my static mesh filter. Throne interior wall 2. We'll select that for wall pieces. Let's say floor, cape floor 01, select our floor. And let's say just for kicks, metal. No, nothing metal. Let's say brick. No, just let's delete all the filters. Let's see what we have. We have throne room master. Just I'll select that for now. I'll select my pillars, select my wall, and apply that. So again, it's not perfect, but we're just using the base cubes to represent what we want to build for the geometry. When we come to the visuals, things are looking really cool. But this is just a lot of placeholder stuff that shows we have our walkway, we have our ledge, we have our entrance, we have the rock formation around it to kind of match the concept. In the next phase, I'm going to work on replacing a lot of this with static meshes. So this is the end of the first part of the tutorial. The second part of the tutorial will cover static meshes.